much. And we are in open session after an extended exec session, but we will start. And there we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome everybody. We are back and we are ready to get going, and it is almost almost June, but not quite. So where are we? There's no modifications, right? We're all good on the agenda. Nothing separate. Administration didn't walk on a bunch of stuff that we weren't prepared for, right? Well, looking at administrators.
We don't do that anymore.
Yeah, right. Okay. Never ever happened. So we're on to receiving and hearing of delegations, and which means that we could hear from the public. But today, we get to hear from some folks who went to Morocco, and you are going to talk about your trip, and we look forward to that. So you're up. And your student, I assume your students in the Ithaca City School District, right? So, okay. So please introduce yourself.
I'm Kukas, we're all seniors in Morocco.
And my name is Cynthia, I'm also a senior.
My name is Zoe. My name is Madeline. I'm also a senior. There are only seniors on this trip this year, I believe. And we have a presentation for you all as well. So next slide. So this is just one of our group pictures. I think this was in Rabat, one of the first cities we went to. It's just like an alleyway. This is like our whole group, and you see our chaperones there and stuff.
The guy with the beard, yeah.
Alright, next slide.
Oh, and we had guides for the trip, so that we had this man named Rashid who led us around Morocco, and Hajar, this is Hajar, she was our sort of the one who stuck with us the whole time. She went to all the different places that we did, and they were like our cultural leaders, and they like took us around where we were going to go, and were able to show us as much about Morocco as possible. They were so amazing, and we're so lucky to have them on our trip as well.
Alright, so this one here is from our homestay, and this is a picture of our food. They gave you a lot of food in Morocco. They would give you like maybe like when you got home for the day at like 7 or 6, they would give you like one meal, and then like a few hours later they'd give you another meal, and then a few hours later you'd have dinner. So like they were really big on eating. They'd be like eat like
Coolie.
yeah. Yeah, like lots of like homemade breads and jams and stuff like that. And then another thing that they were big on, as you can see in the other picture, is taking pictures. Especially like, I know me and Sia, like the other girls who have blonde hair, they were like, and Helena too, they were like, oh, can we take a picture with you? Like, even if you don't know them, like, anyone at the school would come up to you and be like, oh, like, can we take a selfie? Because like, they don't see blonde hair that much, and like, so that was a really cool part. Yeah.
I got so many direct messages like on Instagram and Facebook of these random Moroccans who had taken selfies with me during the trip. It was just like a picture of me and this Moroccan who I like showed my Instagram to.
No, they're incredibly friendly, and they want to practice their English also. But they always want to talk to you, find out what your story, and I mean, I met a lot of really interesting people. I talked to like the caterers who at one of the nice dinners we went to, and he like showed us how you cut up an apple to make it look like a swan, and he talked about like his family's farm where they grow olives. So there were a lot of really cool experiences with that.
Okay, so on the trip, music and dance played a pretty large role. So wherever we went, whether it be in restaurants or on the streets, music accompanied us everywhere. So on this picture on the left, it was in a restaurant. I think it was like the last dinner we had in Morocco, and there were these group of men who were playing live music in the restaurant, playing traditional Moroccan music, and they mainly were using drums and something called the Kev for something. They're like handheld cymbals, and they started playing around us, and all of a sudden we started dancing and forming a Congo line right here, just going all around the restaurant. So that was really fun. And another time was kind of at this hotel where we were eating at, and there were a group of women also playing Moroccan music, and we started forming a circle and started singing and dancing and clapping our hands. So it was really fun to see how music and dance kind of united us and allowed us to bond with the people there in the community there more. So while we were at Morocco, we were able to visit 2 high schools that our host families actually went to school. So, and at those schools, we were presented with various presentations. So at one of them, they presented this like a story to us, like right here, and you can see them wearing these like traditional Moroccan garments. And another one, they held a fashion show for us. So they actually invited all the girls on our trip to try on all these Moroccan dresses, and then we like walked around the classroom and modeled for everyone. So that was really cool, being able to try on these clothes that most of us haven't been able to try on before. And while they presented to us, we also had the opportunity to present to them. So we had students and teachers present on various topics such as what it's like going to school at Ithaca High School and what it's like living in Ithaca. So these presentations were an opportunity for us to learn more about their culture and their lives, and also for them to learn more about us.
And then this picture is so cool because like what happened is they just started inviting people onto the stage. So some of the things, like this is apparently a science, like I was talking to my host sister, she said that this group of students was a science class because they're on different tracks in their high school. So this is a science track of students who got together and presented King Lear, like an abridged version of King Lear for us. So, you know, like Shakespearean English, like it was a great way for them to practice their English, and they also, like, they presented to us, and it was really, really cool to see. That's what the costumes were too.
Right. So the picture on the left is in this old madrasa that we went to in, I think that was Fez. So it was an old religious school which had this really, really beautiful architecture. It was really fascinating for me. I took AP Art History this year, and it was sort of a way to practice things I was learning. Like I was really looking hard at the tile work and like the floral patterns. So on the left you have our guide Rashid, who we already mentioned. It's just this really, really beautiful place. I felt really lucky that we got to go there. And on the right, that was one of the restaurants that we ate in, which was sort of an old house that had been converted into a hotel. Just a really nice house. And again, like the beautiful stuff on the ceiling. And I mean, the food was incredible, but I was also like looking at our surroundings. And definitely the food was one of the really special parts of the trip. This is a panorama I took of Tulal High School, which is one of the high schools that we visited together with the Al Ghazali High School. So you see sort of, it was a really beautiful place. I think you could tell that they had fewer resources, and I mean, we toured all the classrooms and saw like the science classrooms, and they only had one projector, but they had this beautiful courtyard with all the flowers in the back, and you saw the city. And I think you can see the soccer goals near the wall in the back, and you have the Moroccan flag on the left, and the courtyard on the right, where they gather to like sing the national hymn before the school day every day. Yeah, and I thought it was a really nice place. And then this is at the other high school where we were being served lunch. So that's Ilyas, who's Moroccan, on the right, and then Devin and Toby. And so it was this really nice couscous. And so traditionally you eat with your hands from this central platter, which is something that I thought was really cool because it feels like you're more together when you're having a meal. I wanted to try that out when I came home. And I mean, the food was really beautiful also. But.
Is that it?
I think that's it.
All right.
Oh, there's more too. I also added more slides.
Okay.
Okay. So when I was just looking through the pictures, I really loved the pictures that sort of showed some of the students on the trip. So this is Shua, who is one of us who was on the trip with us, and Shua's host sister Naima. Before we left for the trip, we started talking to the Moroccan students we would be living with and spending time with online beforehand first through Edmodo, where we all introduced ourselves in a more formal setting and were able to answer and ask questions and do some cultural exchange prior to when we were actually in the country. And then through Edmodo, they reached out to us through like Facebook Messenger and Instagram, and we were able to start talking to them and really like have this experience of communication even before we left. So we'd already built relationships with some of the students we would be meeting. And Naima was just one of the most amazing people, like the most outgoing person I've ever met, and she was friends with like everyone on the whole trip. And I'm still talking to her. I'm still in touch with her now, which is really cool experience. But we were in the Medina in Meknès, which is the city where we stayed with our host families. We were sort of on two different ends of the city because we were separated into these two different schools. So I don't know if we talked about the schedule of our trip at all, but we stayed for one night in Rabat after coming in through the airport in Casablanca. Then we traveled to Meknès for about 3 days and stayed with the host families and went to the schools and got to experience that. Then we spent a couple days in Fez, which is the oldest place I've ever been. And then we went back to Rabat for the last night of our stay. But one of the biggest things that I noticed through the trip is that everyone had different motivations for why they really wanted this experience. Like all of the students involved and the teachers. The personal gift in it for me is that I've never traveled before. Like I've never been on a plane or been outside the U.S. So this is my first time having that experience. Just wanted to be as dramatic as possible. And so getting that cultural experience for the first time was really, really beneficial for me personally, because I'll also be doing exchange next year in India as a gap year, so having that prior to this experience was really meaningful. But the reasons that everyone shared for going on the trip were just so incredible, because we went around the room in one of our orientation sessions, and I heard everything from first time traveling to wanting to experience a different economic system, because the whole bargaining was a whole other part of our trip that you should ask questions about if you're interested, because it was so cool. To just wanting to experience cultural exchange, all of these incredible reasons. It's not one of those trips that you go on just because your friends are doing it. It's supposed to bring together this group of people who come from different backgrounds and really want to share this incredible experience together. So I feel like this is is a good example of the camaraderie. Okay, there's one more. And this one too. Just the ultimate, the joy that we were experiencing while we were there. I just felt so connected to everyone on the trip. Both the Moroccans and the kids from the US. I wasn't expecting to, because I didn't know anyone we were leaving with super well, but by the end of it, we were just really comfortable with each other, and we bonded in a lot of ways, just because we were going through the same experience, I think. And I just thought this was a good example of that. We were just all so happy all the time, but we also got to experience a little bit of culture shock and really had to confront that and really talk about some of the things that we were noticing and the experiences we were having, especially on the little buses that we were taking around. I had some really good conversations with everyone around that. And this is my host sister, so I put her in there. It's Zina. And yeah, I think just the conversation that I got out of this trip was really incredible. We were talking about Islam a lot because I was really interested in her experience, and we talked about wearing the hijab. We talked about her experience as an Islamic woman, and just what is in the Quran. These incredible conversations that I would never experience if it wasn't for this trip. So I was really, really grateful. I guess I could just talk for a super long time, so I'm going to cut it off there.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you all for letting us go on this trip, and we look forward, or our juniors look forward to going next year. So,
Good.
Yeah. I think that's.
Oh, thank you. Any questions while
Yeah, I was going to say that's definitely a.
I do have a question. To your comment just now about the different religious structure, I mean, if I understand it correctly, 99% of the people there are Sunni Muslim. So I'm wondering how you all interpreted a life under a religious state as opposed to our freedoms, if you will, that we have here. What did that feel like for you? Did it feel like an imposition? Did it just feel like something in the background?
I think it definitely, well, one of the biggest things that I think is like underneath all of that, so when you think of like an Islamic country, like I think the misconception is so often that it's like there's just like Saudi Arabia, or then there's no, like that all Islamic countries are like the same or have or you know operate under this similar system, but it's so different depending on like where you are. And I think that the differences we noticed were definitely like the obvious ones. Like we all heard the call to prayer many times throughout our trip, and we, you know, just like women walking around like in different clothing than women do here, and then the way that like that Islam is like incorporated into the schools that everyone attends. And to me it's very much, well, I was talking a lot about like the hijab, for instance, with my host sister, and she said that for her it's very much like it's a personal choice that she makes, that she sort of came to on her own. I think she said she started wearing hijab when she was 13, and her parents were like, "Are you sure? You want to do that?" Because of all of the sort of the baggage that comes with it, in the sense that it's like, it's like this big sort of rite of passage, or it can be. And what I was definitely left with is that all of a lot of it is choice, and a lot of it is left up to individual interpretation, depending on the students we were talking to. Like there's so many differences even in the students that we were living with. I don't know if you guys want to talk about that at all. Hearing the differences.
Yeah, I would say that it varied from like family to family. Like my host was like, oh, like yeah, I had a boyfriend like a few weeks ago or whatever, and like. But the other family would be like, oh, you can't go in public. Like if you're dating someone, like your parents have to be there with them, like with the boy. So it just like depends on the family and how strict they were. But also I would say they were really interested in our religion. Like my host was like, oh, what religion are you? And I was like, oh, I don't really have one. Like she was like, why not? Like well, what would you be if you did have one? I was like, I don't really know. Like these are like deep questions. But yeah, no, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I do feel like religion there was very individualized in terms, like even within our host sisters, let's say I think it was Eva's host sister, what she wore versus what Maddie's host sister wore was very different. And like there's a degree of choice to how much they want to present themselves with their religion, in terms of like what they wear. And there's like in Muslim you had to pray, in like Islam you pray 5 times a day. But like when they did it was like, I didn't actually see like my host family actually do any, and they were so open-minded to talk about their religion, and like they were very curious about us. But I just feel like everything was just so open-minded, and everyone was just so like wanting to learn more about each other. And I never felt like it was like really restrictive or like pushing or anything like that.
I just remembered that we, on one of the first days, I believe at the Imam Ghazali School, which is where my host sister was from, they took us to the American Language Center. Because like in Morocco you learn, like there's a British language center, American language center, I think probably like a German language center as well, like which is how you gain like bilingual or trilingual, or just how you learn different languages. And what they had us do is they had some students who were there, like this is a learning experience for them, and the director of the school sort of led us in a facilitated conversation. So we ended up having conversations about, I believe it was with the entire group, like 30 kids, and then plus a couple of people who were also attending the school. I believe one of our topics was like the role of marriage. Yeah, talking about schools like single gender schools. Yeah, like we were having these incredible conversations that I was not expecting when I signed up for the trip, like to be like, at least in a formal setting. But seeing the role of religion involved with those conversations as well, like I guess it was just all across the board for sure.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Oh, Chris.
I was actually really happy to hear you say everyone's individual purpose for going to this trip. And one thing we always discuss, you know, when we approve, and thank you guys for going and taking, we approve it, but we are more than happy to, actually we're encouraging that these things happen. And one of our challenges and focuses is to get as many students to go as possible. And you know, everyone has their own individual reasons, and people also have their own individual discouragements of not going. And my question to you is, how do we open this up to more students to make it available?
So I'll just jump in and say that next week our students are going to every single junior English classroom, and they'll present to every single member of the junior class their experiences. And we're encouraging anyone who's interested to apply to go onto that trip next year. So we're really pushing to make sure that it's not just word of mouth, but that every student hears about this trip and learns that this is something that they could do. And we also this year were able to provide scholarships for 5 students, and we're looking to do at least that much next year, so that financial considerations don't hold people back.
You know, and thank you for sharing that, because I know financial is always a reason, and money is real and it's a factor, but also just that the mental process. And I shared this actually when we were talking about the Paris trip, where when I was younger, I wouldn't have thought, oh, you know, I'm not going to go abroad, I'm not going to leave the country. My brother, if it cost my family an arm and a leg, he's like, Ma, pay for me, I'm going. But I regret it so much now, not taking advantage of the opportunity. Actually, kudos to you for taking this big leap. You didn't go to Canada, you went to Morocco. No, really. Yeah. You know, and I think your story and anybody else's, if this was their first trip, could be so encouraging to other students who are intimidated by this process, you know, and that's my goal, something I hold on to, because I said it before. When I got my passport and I left this country, they shouldn't have done that. Every chance I get, I'm gone. You know? But it's such a...
You should keep coming back.
Yeah, I do.
But you keep coming back. There you go.
It's called a job. But no. But you know what? It's so enlightening, and the topics you guys brought up, and the conversation, and the interaction, and getting to know different cultures is so inspiring. And I can feel your energy. So you know, and I really appreciate that. And I think your energy can be contagious to other students, and you know, kind of demystify that, because people have to let go of their own perceptions.
I think it's all about the reputation. Like last year was the first year that this trip happened, but I had already decided like, okay, I'm doing this next year, because I knew one of the girls who went on the trip, and I followed the Instagram of IHS Goes to Morocco, and I was like seeing the pictures that they were posting. I heard the presentations. There was like an information session that I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to this information session. And what basically, we didn't really talk about the application process, but there was just this like little application that we filled out. It was like, okay, why do you want to go on this trip? Because there's limited space, you know, like they want to get as diverse a group as possible, and they want it to be a really good, you know, perspective of people that are going. But there are only like 20 spots or something like that. So there was like the process to go through, but it was very much like, why are you interested in going on the trip? Have you ever traveled before? Like just like those 2 little things. So I was really able to speak personally about like why I was interested in going on you know, making this a possibility. But it's also just the reputation as far as like the fundraising process goes. Like there's more group fundraising for this trip than any other trip at the high school that I've heard about. Because we did things like rake leaves together. Like we would go in groups and go to people's houses and rake leaves. We're gonna do like bake sales or something like that. Like the group that went last year did a pancake breakfast all together. It's really a communal process. You build these relationships with the group before you even leave. And since I had heard about that, I decided that this was definitely the way to go. So I think it's all about the reputation in that sense.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Anyone else? Thank you very much. Great trip.
Thank you.
And
Great job.
who
Congratulations.
are your chaperones? And maybe you could name them for anybody who might not know who they are.
Mr.
Kokosh.
Harlan Gray.
Yeah.
Mr. Noyes, Tom Noyes, Ms. Zimmerman.
And sadly, I cannot get to go this year.
Yeah.
I feel like I was a constant presence.
Were you following on Instagram?
But would not have happened without you, Steve.
It's true.
So I think that's
When we
the...
got there, everyone was like, "Where's Mr. Weiss?"
Got a lot of gifts back for you.
So,
But it would not have happened without chaperones.
Right.
So,
right.
Which also had your application process too, right? Like there's, like you want to make sure you get as good a group as possible.
Yeah, and we're also committed to trying to bring as many staff members as we can.
Right. Cool. Outstanding. Thank you all.
Thank
you. Great job. Still on public comment period, and Chris, do we have?
Yes, we do. Melissa Zarin.
Close enough, Zaram, yes.
Zaram.
Hi. Am I supposed to get up and
Oh, you can, wherever you speak from there is fine.
I can stay where I am?
Can you project really well?
I'll try.
And, well, go ahead and let the kids walk by you when since they didn't wait for
That
you
was
to
a
speak,
treat. I
but that's
didn't know we
okay.
were in for a tour tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feel free, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm here to ask a simple plea for our school, which is LACS. I'm sure you're all familiar with the changes that are about to happen. And I know a lot of you worked really hard to come up with this new principal that I'm hearing glowing, beautiful things about. And I think our community is very excited to welcome this new person. But we are worried. And I guess I'm here on behalf of a lot of teachers because one of the privileges of being a parent at LACS is that you develop relationships with these teachers. And I've been talking to them and listening to them. And they have a look of fear in their eyes. And it's not because of this new principal. I think they're really excited about her. But they're really worried about how the school is just going to function. There's a lot that happens over the summer, for example, where there's nobody there to do it. One of the reasons why that's a concern is that the two guidance counselors that have been there pretty much from the beginning are retiring at the same time as Diane. And they do a lot, I'm sure you're all familiar that the teachers at LACS wear a lot of hats, as do the guidance counselors. So they do a lot more than college admission and processes and stuff like that. So they do a lot of work over the summer, and I think the teachers are just worried that our new principal is going to need some help. I'm here to ask for an assistant principal, at least for the transition for next year. Because of the amount of details that are so hard to learn at that same moment when you're stepping in and trying to lead. And I think the community really needs somebody to be able to hit the ground running in both of those areas. There was one other, I know I wrote a letter, I don't know if some of you read it, but there are different compartments of ACS that are just so hard to understand how it works because they've developed a kind of loony system that I'm sure you're all sort of familiar with how confusing it is. And when we first came into the community, I remember being a little bit uncomfortable with how complicated it was. But after, I think this is our 6th year with our daughter there, we've come to realize that the reason that it's complicated is because it is pliable. They want very much to be able to tailor the process to the process of learning to the ideals of democracy and discovery and freedom and equity. Those are, guiding principles at ACS. And in order to be able to do that for all these different individuals, there have to be a variety of buffers and changes, and it takes time. And I know that the teachers, this is my last bit, the teachers at ACS are very hardworking. They wear a lot of hats. They're not afraid that it's going to be extra work. That is not, I think, their concern. What it looks like is that they're just afraid that those foundation things that need to happen in order for them to roll up their sleeves and get to work won't be in place. And so I'm hoping that an assistant principal who's really familiar with the school will be there as a liaison to our new incoming principal.
Very good, thanks. Anyone else at this time? We'll move on on to student reps, and I think we're down to student rep.
Well,
So,
it's trips week at LACS, so.
Okay, so for some student council updates, student council is currently planning a more structured field day with prizes and other events. And so field day will include performances from various clubs such as K-pop dance club, Nunchuck club, and other dance performances. And so a survey has been circulating IHS about prizes and events to increase student input in planning field day. And so for events, junior prom took place this Saturday, May 19th at the Johnson Art Museum. And overall, it was a very successful event. It was really fun, and it was at a great venue. And so school-wide elections are taking place tomorrow, May 23rd. And there are many new candidates running for positions, and an unprecedented 7 people are running for reps to the board. So that's really good.
It is a fun place to be. So, go ahead.
And so Soldier Story Day is taking place this Friday.
Excellent.
And so Soldier Story Day is basically where soldiers come and share their experiences with social studies classes. And it's a really valuable and rewarding experience to learn more about the wars and experiences. And so senior prom is June 16th at Celebrations. And for sports, boys tennis had sectionals last weekend and state qualifiers this past weekend, or last week. And it was very successful, and 2 team members advanced to states.
Excellent. Thanks. Great job. I did get one input from a certain junior I know, and I got the word that the prom was, wow, it was more fun than I thought it would be. So I was like, oh, okay, thanks, Sarah. Okay. But it was a lot of fun. And, yeah.
Cool after party too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, I heard all of it.
What? What did you say?
I'll tell you later.
Oh, okay, one of those.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Glad to hear their field day is still ongoing, and it evolved to what the guy wants it to be. So board responses to anything at this point? Del?
When is field day?
The last day of school.
Last day of school.
Well, the
Slope
last
day.
day of classes.
Yeah.
So that's June 8th.
Yeah.
You know, slope day, field day, we're flat down here. Okay, go ahead. All right.
Melissa.
Which members of which team advanced to states?
Well, 2 members from boys tennis team.
Boys tennis.
And I did not know we had a nunchuck team. I've got to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. To just respond to Melissa's comments, as an LACS parent, and having 3 children who went through the high school first and then going to LACS, yes. It's different, and there are things, and you scratch your head and you're like, okay, and not to respond to the request for an assistant principal, but understanding, we realize especially that change is different, and I think everyone gets this anxiety, especially with a new leader coming in, what's going to happen, and they're like, oh, I ask that folks trust us, and we know that the parents and the staff there aren't afraid to be vocal and share their input. But what I would request is really understanding and what is best for the school, and I should probably temper my words because I mean this, what's best for the school and what can we hold on to, what can we improve, what can we let go of. And I wholeheartedly say this, I'm not afraid to say it, like for me, I will never go to LACS during lunch period ever. I went there once, and I will never go again until they change it. Okay? So that's something where I see us having an opportunity. So where we need to really look, I think LACS does some wonderful things, and especially the democratic process. It really helped my daughter develop and grow as a person who she is. So I think we need to embrace who we are and what we have in that jewel of the school. So I don't know if I answered anything to you, but I definitely understand what you're saying.
Am I allowed to
Well, this is just board responses. Go ahead, Moira.
Well, as a parent of a teacher at ACS, who also went to ACS, and also as the aunt of 6 nieces who went to LACS, I certainly know that the teachers are very hardworking. That I know. And I've also been the liaison to LACS from the board for the last 2 years. And a few weeks ago, I went to a meeting, a staff meeting. I've been to a number of them, and I always have a great time there. But they had begun, and this was staff initiated, a process of what Chris was talking about, looking at, features of the school and doing some brainstorming. It was a great process about what are aspects that individuals would like to see kept, what they'd like to see changed, what they'd like to see discarded. And I think that it was a great process. And so I think, and they're using that as the foundation to be ready for this new principal at ACS. So I think LACS. When my daughter went there, it was ACS, so continue to say ACS. So I think, I understand that they're nervous, but I also think they're excited, and they're willing to be thoughtful about moving forward. And I guess I'd also say that in terms of the summer, we expect Deb Patak to be on board by July 1st. So, yeah.
Anyone else? I will only add that offer my congratulations to Moira, Nicole, and Pat for their re-election a week ago. What's that? Sorry, Ann. Sorry. Pat's not here. Sorry, Ann. That's all right. Thank you, Ann. So I was thinking.
I'm just usually in this position. I'm usually sitting over there.
Yeah, so that's what's up. So you're out of my sight. So congratulations on your re-election. Thank the community for overwhelmingly supporting the propositions. The approval was 81.47%. We'll call it 82% on the budget. Probably the highest I think a lot of us have ever seen. It's a long process, big process, but all 3 propositions passed as well. We can't thank the community enough, and can't thank the administration, building leaders, staff, teachers, etc., for putting it all together so we could pass it, so Ann could get reelected again. And congratulations, and Nicole is not here tonight, but congratulations to her as well. So before I speak and call Brad something else, we're going to move on, and if we could just do the consent agenda, we have some business to get to.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second by Chris, who beat Brad. Okay, and there's a fair amount of pages here. So. And it was reviewed at Finance yesterday, and there was enough folks there to review it. So any questions? We all good? All in favor? That's not quite everyone. Chris, Rob, Eldred, Brad, and well, and Moira. I'm looking at Brad, and Eldred's nameplate is there. So, and those against, those abstaining, that would be Ann. So consent agenda just passed, and so we're going to quickly go through updates just on the work sessions. If we could just roll through quickly. Ann, go ahead, sir.
Okay, 2 main things for legislative advocacy. We are still working on the health insurance reserve legislation, and it is slowly making progress. It has actually moved out of committee in the Senate, and is actually on the floor of the Senate, so it hasn't been scheduled yet, but that's progress. And in the assembly, it is moving along. Hopefully, they'll be voting on it soon, but we've been told that it's, there's support for it. So that's one piece of a status update on that. And the other update we have is in relationship to the LEAP program at New Roots, which is the program for kids who should be having completed 8th grade, and after having completed 8th grade, they would have an extra year before going into 9th grade. But up to this point, there have been kids, which we learned about during the hearing, of kids that had not yet completed 8th grade. And were in sometimes 6th or 7th grade, and sometimes in 8th grade, not having completed it yet. So anyways, there was a determination by the SUNY Charter Institute saying that puts them out of compliance on that issue. So that's where we're at.
So Brad, go ahead.
Sure.
Facilities, yeah.
I'll do facilities and finance together. And finance, thank you again about the public for supporting the budget again. We appreciate that, and hopefully we plan to be very careful with it. We're going to have the facilities and finance could be meeting together June 19th. That'll be our next meeting. We'll be hearing from food service. We'll be having a discussion on classroom supplies. We'll also be getting some updates on year-end status, where we're going to be on June 30th. And on the facilities side, continuing the conversation having to do with the next bond project. Our target is to take it to the voters next May. As you recall, our targets are health and safety, maintenance, and 21st century classrooms. So we're starting down through that process. It'll accelerate over the course of the summer. In the early fall, we should have chances for input from different buildings and building leaders and faculty as that moves ahead. So look forward to hearing more about that.
Thanks. And HR?
Well, I was unable to attend yesterday's HR meeting. Moira, would you care to?
Yesterday, we looked at tenure recommendations for people who are up for tenure at the end of this year. And then we had a review from principals of their untenured faculty members from Cayuga Heights, Northeast, and Bell-Sherman, yes. And those conversations we've found very valuable. Mike Simons is asking for our input on the process of that review as we look at how we might want to change it for next year.
Thanks.
That's it.
And, well, curriculum. Moira.
Curriculum. So we're going to be hearing about a number of things from Laura and Margie shortly, which have been the focus of curriculum committee, an inclusion plan and a plan to do some instructional rounds. So Laura's going to be talking about that soon.
And inclusion came up at HR. Basically, we talk about a lot.
Yes.
I was sitting in last night for some others, so I got to be part of HR committee. I was honored to be there. But it was a good conversation.
Yeah.
We talked about it all the time. Policy, we're going to do some policies later, and Sean, so I think we're all right.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Brown.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Your turn.
I would defer, because there's a special announcement. We have some pretty significant flooding going on outside right now.
Yep.
And we may want to take a quick break to move some cars if you're parked out front.
So we are back. Sorry.
You only
We are back.
sent the one.
And Dr. Brown, just before we were interrupted by we were being flooded out. And I do want to point out that not only was Ann reelected, but Ann dove into the raging torrent to save the administration building, to save cars. No, I mean actually hands-on and dug down in to clear out drains. So we are under control, I hope, in the parking lot. I was so confident, and I did not move my car. And I think hopefully the water level is going to be diminishing. And as we know, and Brad from facilities knows, water flows best downhill. We tried to explain that to an architect.
We did one architect who was convinced it was going to go uphill.
In Ithaca, it flows downhill, and we're at the bottom. And so Ann, great job. And folks are the facilities maintenance guys are here, and the police, et cetera, are here. So they're going to take care of that. And Dr. Brown, you were interrupted, actually, because it was your first message to us tonight was, well, we better go check outside. So
Yeah.
You have more, perhaps, Dr.
I do. Just one brief item. The New York State School Boards Association School Board Youth Recognition Program has granted their annual awards, and we have quite a few members here in our school district, speaking of great board members, who are being recognized by NISBA. And they're separated by Achievement Awards, Excellence Awards, and Mastery Awards.
Wow.
Mastery. We've never had a mastery, but we do this year. Getting an Achievement Award this year, Sean Eversley Bradwell and Eldred Harris. Congratulations. And this is, you get these awards for happy people. It's my first awards in 6 years.
Hang that up for the fridge.
Professional development workshops, meetings, so you have to earn these. These don't come back.
Just for showing up.
No, you just think you're coming and eating the free meals. Earning an Excellence Award, 2 people, Ann Reichman and Moira Lane. An awesome one.
That's very cool. Early in careers.
Now, like I said, I've never seen a Mastery Award. And I didn't know this, but with the Mastery Award comes a coupon for a free in-person training at one of the workshops. So those workshops that we pay for and we register for, you get to go to for free. Ooh. And you get...
if you're Mastery,
if you're Mastery,
you go workshops.
And who would get the Mastery recognition? No other than our longtime board president, Robert Banksley.
So he gets a coupon to do more.
Congratulations to all the board members earning those prestigious awards.
Well, thank you, Dr. Brown. And obviously, they didn't see the tape of this meeting because I forgot who got reelected, but that's or I knew, but well, thank you all. It's that's great, and it's we talk all the time. It's just going to the annual meeting or going to the roundtables that they have, just interacting with other boards, other presidents, other districts around the state. Makes us very thankful that we represent this one. We are able to do what everybody wishes they could do. So. Yeah, we're a bunch of us are here.
It's about to get flooded out because we've got about water coming all over the park.
Who's got the Buick? Who's got the Buick?
It's not a Buick.
Is it getting worse out there?
That's an insult.
No, I think they're just not good.
That's an insult. It's an insult
I was
to
just-
Cadillac that's ever been made.
Yeah. I'll look in a while. So anyway, we are able to do a lot here that others wish they could do, and so we thank everybody. And Dr. Brown, anything else?
No, I think we're ready to keep moving and hopefully barring any outbursts from the community out there.
Keep a lookout.
As opposed to this patriotic from going, oh,
It's best open mic night at ICSD. Once the budget's passed, it's, anyone that wants to come in and whatever, yeah.
I'll defer now to our instructional leaders if you're prepared to move forward in this area.
Oh, please. Welcome, thank you, and nice job getting to your car.
So we're going to put the cap on a very exciting evening. First Morocco, then flooding, now inclusion. It's going to just be great. So here we are.
Hi, I'm Margie Shaw, and I have the title of Master Educator for Inclusion.
So we're going to start really quickly. We're going to start with a little bit of history. So go ahead, Jennifer. I know, conversations really about inclusion started long before I got here, and with Dr. Landahl and community conversations and that kind of thing, which led us to some forensic work in the beginning of the year. Go ahead, Jen. And we took a look at several of the documents that have been around the district. The first one, there's a strategic plan for equity, that's in 2005. And then the blueprint for improved results for students with disabilities led to a draft in 2015, 16, and then this final framework into last spring. So the curriculum committee, as Moira said, has been working hard to kind of bring all the best points of these together. And what we're doing is we're kind of unifying our efforts because, as you know, with inclusion we think about equity, but we also think about special education, including students with disabilities. So we're kind of bringing all of those different pieces together to kind of a unified, cohesive plan. So tonight when we talk, we'll give examples from both the equity side and the disability side as examples. So just to reiterate, often people when they hear the word inclusion think about special education, but really inclusion is much larger than that. It's looking at our schools, classrooms, programs, and lessons that are designed in ways that all children can participate and learn. Finding different ways of teaching so that the classroom actively involves all children, not some. And creating environments that welcome all people, not just our students and our children, but also our adults. So thinking about this, one way to think about it is inclusion is more than just being physically present and physically included, but cognitively, socially, academically included in what is happening in the classroom, in the school community. Here's one way to think of it. Diversity is about who's on the team. Inclusion is about who gets to play. Do you want to say?
Sure. So here is our first unified sports basketball team. Section 4 decided to get on board, and I just was at a game this evening. And the wonderful thing about this program is it's kind of the next step of Special Olympics, where it is students with disabilities and their non-disabled peers. So the team is made up of all students, and it is an incredibly inclusive and wonderful thing to see. Our final game is tomorrow at 4:30, so please attend right here at the high school.
I would highly recommend it. So how do we get from those lofty goals to actual practice implementation that changes our day-to-day practice for both children and adults in our community? So 3 avenues that Marky and I work actively in are professional learning, evaluation and reflection, and then continuous improvement. So we'll go through each one of these, just give you the highlights of what we've been doing. So in the professional learning, the focus of learning for all the adults that work with our students are confronting bias, building relationships, and high expectations for all our students. So go ahead, click one more time. There we go. So really our year started last year in July with the Inclusion Conference. It was actually my first day of work.
Yeah.
And so we heard from Oliver, and he shared with us some of his thoughts about being included in school. And that just kind of kicked off the learning. We had our district PLC day, which all our schools followed up in some way on the learning from the Inclusion Conference. We had different book loops going on, and we did give a little report, in the fall about what different schools did there. Then a couple of schools, Northeast and LACS, has followed up on Dr. Ross Green's work, which is based on children will do well if they can. And so they're taking this class, I think the last class is this Friday, called Collaborative Proactive Solutions class, where they're really working through learning that Plan B that Ross Green talks about, and working through that. So we're continuing there. And then all of our administrators have participated in a book study of culturally responsive teaching in the brain. Some of them are doing it at their schools. Our district PTA just started. Go ahead and click one more time. And as I said, you know, our professional learning extends beyond just our teachers and people in the classroom. So we've worked with...
Yeah, so we've had the opportunity,
Go ahead.
transportation, and we've also had, so we've had 2 sessions with transportation, and we've had 2 sessions with educational support professionals, where we provided professional development with inclusion, confronting bias. We've gone over the special education process, Google tools,
growth mindset. So this is just a chart that our transportation department generated when they were thinking about the ideal graduate as a way of setting context for how we respond to kids as they get on and off the bus and through their ride. So that was from last Thursday. So on to the evaluation and reflection part of our work. We do a lot of data collection. And we started this year collecting data on students' experiences that, students that have one-to-one or adult support in the classroom. And we had started there because that was evident in some of the other reports that, you know, that was a place to look and start streamlining. So we started collecting data there, and I just wanted to tell one little story, and then I'm going to turn it over to Margie. What we're looking for with all of our students, regardless of their race, ability, etc., is to go from where you are right now to learning and improving and growing and becoming more and more independent. So, you know, Marty's going to talk about the urgency of how much time we have to do that with our kids. So I'll just tell you this story about a little guy named Alan, not his real name. It is about a real little guy who came into kindergarten, who's diagnosed with autism, and he really had trouble with school structure. And he really had, he was given a one-to-one aid, and he really had the support of his educational support professional, his teachers, his principal, and everybody worked together to kind of build scaffolds for Alan and then take them away as he learned new things. They worked on his reading comprehension. They found that morning work was a time that he could start to become independent. So our kindergartner went from 6 hours a day of one-to-one assistance to now he's in grade 2, he's got 3 hours. And so you can see, you know, he is developing in his own personal agency and independence. So that's the kind of story that we're looking for as we work with our students. So I'll turn over the data collection piece to you.
So we have collected, we've been in many classrooms, and we created a data form where we're doing 1-minute observations, and we're marking on a form each minute what the adult is doing and what the student is doing at the time. Okay, and this really came out of, in 2016, new requirements that came out to the Part 200 to really look at why you assign an adult to a student, because that truly is one of the most restrictive environments, and then what you do to, you know, what you work on to make that student learn those skills to become more independent, you know, as they move through school. So the first slide that we're sharing is social interactions with peers, and so what the data shows right now is that that 40% of our students. So this data is when students were working with 2 or more other students, and what we found was that 40% of the time the student was not working with their peers in the group. They were working with typically with the adult that was assigned to them. So this is this is just data. This is just data that we're collecting each minute, and what we want to make sure is that our students are working with their peers rather than an adult, and moving them towards working with their peers.
Just some clarification on this. So this pie chart is representing how many, like a classroom or one kid, or what is it?
Yeah, so
exactly?
do we know how many? It was 60, so I don't know the exact number of students that we observed.
Yeah, LACS, IHS, and our 2 middle schools, and is represented in this data. So 40% of the time when the observer looked up at that minute during group work, students were not engaged with their peers. 60% of the time they were engaged, 40% they were not.
So in terms of that process, like, is that a process you guys came up with, or this is a process that gets used a lot?
The data collection tool?
Yeah, this is.
We came up with it. We brainstormed what we should be looking for, what concretely could you observe that would give us a sense of how students are engaged with curriculum, with each other, with learning, and then we used some of the literature and to guide us and that kind of thing. So we went out, we piloted the tool, tried it, came back, tweaked it, started again, tried it, looked to see are we getting information that's usable.
Tweaked it again.
Tweaked it again.
Yes, yeah.
So this is like a timestamp. When you look up group work, 40% of the time our secondary students are not interacting. 60% they are, but 40%.
It's cool. It seems pretty subjective too, right? Would you, as a tool?
Well, if they're talking, with their peers. So we looked at interactions, we looked at proximity. How close is the student to their adult support, to the teacher, to other students. So we looked at a number of things. We just shared the interaction.
So did the same person look each other? Was it you guys looking, or a classroom teacher, or?
I was the observer for these. Yes,
Oh,
I was
so
sitting
you were the
there with
consistent.
form, and so I would look up every minute. And again, this chart does not have it when a teacher is lecturing. That wasn't part of this data, so because of course they're not talking with anyone.
They're not
at that
supposed to be
point.
interactive.
Yes. So this was in group.
So it's when they were supposed to be working with peers, 40% of the time they were not working.
Which to us is telling, because that's where you make meaning, is when you're rehearsing ideas with your peers or exploring ideas with your peers. So that was telling for us.
Did you break? I'm sorry.
This is interactive. Right, this is the interactive.
It's just interesting because I think it's something that probably is somewhat difficult to figure out a good way to measure, right? So when I'm looking at this pie chart, it looks like a lot of pie charts. So I look at which, and it's like, and yet, what I'd be interested in is if you would prefer to break that down. So it's like, this is like everybody averaged all together. Like, do you also have it like per?
We have it by school.
By school and by grade.
So this is the aggregate of all of that.
So that then what do you do with the information?
Well, that's
we'll keep going.
And please know we were
Softball
observing
out there.
students. We were observing students that had adult support on their IEP.
Okay.
So those are the students that we were looking at.
And it is, again, just the student experience. We're not observing the teacher or the educational support professional, but this is what is going on with the student. So every minute look up.
Appreciate that. Right.
So our next slide, it says harmful effects seen during observation. So the word harmful effects, it comes from, it's a word that they use in the state document, in what we look for that may be harmful to the student when they have an adult attached to them throughout the day. And the two, now this only goes up to 40%, this doesn't go up to 100%. So the two that we really noticed the most were the prompt dependency and the learned helplessness. And those were right around 30%, where the student would be waiting for the adult to prompt them and to get to work. And then the other thing is they're just kind of sitting back and waiting for the adult to work through it.
So this does have some degree of subjectivity. This one is a little more subjective than the first one, but these are different effects that are noted in the literature and that kind of thing.
What I would be interested in at some point is seeing this general chart, not of course tonight, but then seeing that how it varied by grade. Because, say, it is prompt dependency worse by the time somebody's had the assistance for several years?
Yes.
Or does it sneak up over time? So
That's a great question, and that's why we've been really focused on wanting to collect data in every venue that we work, because data surfaces more questions, and it also helps us kind of ameliorate the effects of bias. It's just, well, I have a feeling that this is what happens, but let's look up and let's see what really does happen. So we have been trying to bring data into all of our work.
The last category on the right, learned helplessness. That's fairly, that's a tough category.
It is.
And that's a, do you want to talk about that a bit? Is that obviously that's a system that has not served this child for a long time.
Right.
Could you describe what you would categorize as a example of learned helplessness behavior?
Oh, well, I mean, I can give an example. So one example, well, should I do
Yes.
that? Okay, so I was in a classroom, we were doing instructional rounds actually, and I went into a classroom, there was one adult, there was a teacher, no other adults in the classroom, the students were working in small groups, they were, engaged with each other, they were guiding each other, the teacher was walking around and listening, and when she needed to step in, she would step in, and it was just really exciting to see. Some things fell down, the other students said, it's really, you need to pick that up. So they were all working as groups, and the teacher walked through. I went to the next room, and they were making instruments. The students were going to make instruments, and there were 4 adults in this classroom, teacher, adult supports in the classroom. And they were taking a block with a cup and a rubber band. And the students were all given this to make this instrument. And what happened as the students started pulling this rubber band, the adults started going around and like taking the rubber band. Oh, let me help you with the rubber band. And it was, it was, to me, it was very noticeable that the kids just started, kind of sitting back, and I could just see that that's going to, that could turn into almost like a learned.
One student we saw in high school who waits for somebody to open his backpack.
Yes.
So you can see the effect over time of someone helping you, and instead of prompting you and then fading that prompt, which is a topic that our ESPs have identified as something they'd like to learn more about. How do you fade, how do you prompt appropriately, and then how do you fade that? Any good scaffold that you build is meant to be taken down at some point.
And I have to say, it's not that these support professionals are not working hard and wanting to help students. That is, they are in there because they want to help the students. It's just, how do you help students to move them towards independence versus doing it for them?
So in terms of dealing with that is through professional development then?
Well, I think it is.
Definitely. And so a lot of our work, bleeds into the professional learning. Like these 3 categories of professional learning, evaluation, reflection, and then what's the last one? The continuous improvement kind of all bleed into one another. A lot of crossover. There are some things too in the literature that would be pretty subjective to try to count or collect data on, which are also effects like stigma, loss of personal control, loss of identity or gender identity, or risk of bullying. So those are some other effects too, but it would be very hard to try to observe, so we stuck to things that we could observe as best we could. So this is a poem I'll just share with you. I read it several times in the fall when I started, and Margie and I, it certainly defines our work. It's Outwitted by Edmund Markham. He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. I drew a circle that took him in. So Margie and I, whenever we see a circle being drawn, we try to draw a larger circle and bring people in. So we call people into the conversation and into the learning. So, evaluation and reflection continues with instructional rounds. Our principals and other administrators have been on instructional rounds to learn about what's going on in our classrooms. I'm in the midst of scheduling with our curriculum committee more instructional rounds. The picture is from, I believe that's from Fall Creek, and we can see, you know, some of the work that kids have been doing there. And go ahead and click probably 2 more times, Jennifer. 1 more, yeah. And so people, you know, administrators have looked for, you know, the tracks of learning in the classroom walls, and you can see, you know, where kids have been working. So that's part of our evaluation and reflection, helps us figure out next steps. We've done some of the same work with our point people for response to intervention. We've also gathered a group together to talk about social emotional learning curriculum. We talked a little bit about that the other night. And then all of this requires a lot of collaboration and a lot of, you know, our work kind of, you know, has fingers into other areas. Obviously, special education, curriculum, finance, bargaining units, human resources, our special education PTA. I mentioned the administration, you know, working with technology too. So continuous improvement, and the focus of continuous improvement really is to develop consistency and promote differentiation. We want our kids to have common experiences when it comes to learning, but we also want to recognize that we must differentiate our instruction and our approach to different students' needs. So we're focused on literacy instruction. That's one way that kids are going to get into innovative programs is if they have the skills in literacy to participate. I mentioned the Rti and Differentiated Instruction is another way to reach our students. We've spent quite a bit of time this year with our district-wide PLCs, our occupational therapists, speech language pathologists. They're moving together to start to create consistency, develop systems of how they will administer their programs across all the schools in the district. And lastly, My Brother's Keeper. There's Isaac Butler and Mamadou Ba at the My Brother's Keeper Symposium in April. And I said, is it okay if I take your picture for the board? And they're like, yeah. So there they are with their certificates. And then our next steps, we'll continue all the things that we talked about. We'll start our new year again with our Symposium on Diversity and Inclusivity on July 30 and 31. And lots of professional learning. You know, Margie and Rachel Walker have designed some professional learning for teachers based on some of the things that they saw during our data collection during this year. And then we're going to expand our district-wide PLCs to include our reading teachers and special educators, going around visiting all the different teams at our different schools to develop that relationship and say, we're going to be getting together next year, here's a survey, tell me what the kinds of things that you want to think about and learn together. So those are our next steps. So any questions or comments, thoughts?
Sure. Care to go ahead? Well,
someone else can.
I'll just weigh in a little bit. Article in a newspaper that I read fairly routinely, national paper, but there was a fairly long article about, nationwide, the pushback against inclusion. It's sure we understand this was from basically teacher community perspective, that not here, but frankly out west, but it's, we understand it, but you can't include everyone. And because there's just some kids, they're going to be disruptive, and they really can't be in my class. Because it's going to really detract from the 98% of the rest of the kids. Their instructional day is going to be interrupted. And so therefore that child really can't be in that class. And so when we talk about inclusion, you mean almost all. And the pushback is obviously, I'll say it for you, we mean all. So when we truly want to be inclusive in this district, we're getting the impression from some, and it is verbal, that we are going too quickly, that we're just not ready for this. And there should be more discipline. I mean, inclusion is okay, but there needs to be discipline. So how do you handle this?
That is a great question, and that goes back to that physically included versus cognitively and socially included. It's not enough to be physically present, but to be also cognitively, socially, and academically present. And we run into this almost daily. There's fear involved. I don't really know what are the strategies that we can use to include students. And also, we need to look at a case-by-case basis. Certainly, there are students who need therapeutic settings. So that does happen. But you really need a committee or a group to look at that and make those decisions, and not one person makes it by themselves. Like, I think marking belongs somewhere else. Well, let's talk about that. Let's try some strategies. Let's collect some data. Let's not jump to those conclusions too quickly. But we do have to look at an individual, for some students, we do have to look at it at an individual case-by-case basis. But also bringing people together. I was talking with some reading teachers today at BJM and asked me similar kinds of questions. I said, we're going to come together and share our expertise. We'll come together as a community of practice so we can begin to help each other with some of the problems you face, develop strategies, and share. So, there's a variety of approaches. Working as a team, for sure. Professional learning, providing a lot of reassurance, gathering data are all strategies to use.
And I do believe that we are a community that is so rich in resources, that if we cannot figure it out amongst ourselves, our community is there to support us. I do believe strongly that everyone has the right to an education in an inclusive setting. That does not mean that they may be in that same room with their peers all day, but I do believe that when students leave the Ithaca City School District, they will be living in our community. And so what we need to do is we need to make sure that we provide them every opportunity to be engaged with our community.
E, go ahead. So Rob asked it from one perspective. I'm just asking from the other side of the coin. What we heard clearly in Enfield, besides the incidents, let's put aside the instances of 2 kids. What the parents were saying clearly and what the teachers were saying at the events I attended was, we also can't have a teacher rolling on the floor with one child, right? Doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then, in a sense, letting the educational process go for the other children.
Right.
So if there's, short of a therapy setting outside the school, when do we, now I'm interpreting for these people, when do we begin to really grow the therapeutic environment? And what's the cost of that? And when will we see the resources flow in that direction?
So part of our Building Resilient Schools and our mental health initiative is something that we're starting to talk about again as a group. What are some strategies that we can put in place so that we can provide a variety of settings under our own roof, so that we can give children what they need, yet build the scaffold so that we work into regular classrooms for longer and longer periods of the day. I don't know if you want to share any of the ideas that we've talked about a little bit about, respite for teachers, or just kind of trying to think outside the box in ways to configure our classrooms and our schedules so that students who maybe need some quiet or smaller settings during the day have an opportunity for that, but then also an opportunity to be part of a larger class or a bigger setting.
Yeah, and I think we had a conversation at regional chairs about this the other day. They're not going to be building or creating more classrooms at BOCES, and yet the need is a large need, obviously, regionally, for therapeutic like settings for students. We have a lot of students that are struggling with some very intensive issues, trauma, and so forth. So I think we have to start looking at what can we do. We can't just rely on BOCES as the place, to send students. I think we have to look at what can we do while continue to be inclusive, but how do we do that and yet providing more supports for students and adults within the district, within schools. So a lot of out-of-the-box thinking, I think, and I know Kathy Sinnett's talked a lot about, community, centers, basically. And maybe we need to reimagine what our schools are going to be in the future. Maybe what schools are now are not really meeting or will meet the needs that we're
And
going
can
to need.
I drive home your last point there? Because your question was very specific about when, and from my perspective, we're already 10, 15 years too late. And I've been rolling around with kids since I was at Ratcliffe Elementary in downtown Richmond. It was the same issues I'm seeing now when I was at HS. And then, like now, we weren't set up, the structure or the culture was there to support us being a very therapeutic setting at all for 1 or 100 kids in an elementary or secondary setting. So we need to all step back and reimagine what kind of opportunity are we going to provide for young people if we want to be truly inclusive. But I don't know how you can talk about inclusion and not being 100%. So if we're going to say we're inclusive, it's 100%. But knowing that that's going to take a significant shift in resources, structures, and culture in our buildings that none of us have ever been a part of before. That's where we are right now.
When you say resources, what type of resources?
I'll go on record and say publicly, every building needs many more mental health professionals, not trained in a school setting, but who are doing crisis management in community settings or in real trauma, unlike what, we deal with trauma, we deal with poverty issues, other issues, but there are some significant things that our young people are experiencing now that we haven't experienced as educators before, or seen come into our classroom before. Traditionally, those young people are going off to a self-contained program somewhere else. They are never showing up in a school or public school setting. Those babies now are coming, and we are expected to meet their needs. We want to meet their needs. But to do that with a person, I could be in an elementary classroom right now. In no way have I ever been trained to deal with the kind of issues that we're facing now. And I was called an effective teacher.
Right.
And now, the administrators who've been trained like me don't have a clue on how to deal with this. We have our community resources are also tapped. As we're seeing these issues play out on the commons, in public buildings, these folks are here in our community, and we don't have the community supports to navigate them well. And now we're having to navigate them in a classroom setting with 8-year-olds when there are 17 others there with 1 or 2 other adults. That's a real conversation we need to be having in public education right now.
I'm surprised Ann hasn't said the words community school
Community
yet.
school, that's
I can feel it coming.
Yeah.
That's been a buzzword the last 2 or 3 years. But what does that mean? We have community resources that have been tasked to do just this, and they're tapped. And there are folks we're interacting with every day when we step outside of these buildings who need those resources, who aren't getting them. So here we are as a governing body, a leadership body, saying, we're going to take it on too? So, and I think we need to figure something out. But a community school, what does that mean? Are we now going to take on what the community hasn't done well with, in addition to other things that we're doing?
We already are. I mean, that's...
Yeah, we are. And, yeah, we are.
Because we're the go-to for breakfast and lunch. We're the go-to for food security for a lot of kids. We're the go-to for that some stability, perhaps, some person that they can, whoever that may be,
rely on or
right, that's going to be there every day, except when there's vacation and there's no food or there's no right. So
I can tell you what I've seen in the places where I've seen do it very well. And I'll start by saying that those places are charter schools, right? First of all, let's say that. With vast amounts of resources above and beyond what public schools have traditionally dedicated to this. But the idea seems to be to use our single location and our weight as an 800-pound gorilla to demand a more aligned, more synergistic involvement with our families. Right? So right now, an indigent, a poor woman, poor single mother can be visited by 7 different agencies in a day. Right? And every one of those agencies is knocking on that door to tell that woman, excuse my French, but you're not not doing the job. From a nutrition standpoint, from CPS's standpoint, we can just go down the line. And within the agencies, there's very little communication across those disciplines, right? So what community schools do is invert the process. We're going to bring the parent for this child here, and you're going to all engage with this person, not at once, but in a holistic way. So this person can leave feeling like they have a chance to get out of your clutches eventually, right? So that's one. You use our buildings, we demand a certain level of accountability and synergy. And then the second component is to bring all of the resources that families would need to go to get outside of the school on behalf of children into the school. And that might not be during the school day. Right? Could mean bringing a dental bus before class starts. It could mean having a number of licensed professional crisis counselors available after school. Right? It could mean socializing our PTA budgets, right? Everyone wants to talk about, well, we need our $60,000 for this school, right? Well, there's some very powerful, influential, and successful businesses in this country that socialize those kinds of things, right? Major League Baseball shares the revenue. NFL shares the revenue, right? So there are a number of things we could consider doing as a governing body, and we're trying to get out there and learn them. But the question becomes, where within our structure do we begin to have the honest conversation about doing the work like we do other things, because we know we ain't going to do the work at this table. And the way we're currently set up, I can't say that falls in curriculum. I can't say it falls in finance. Right? It's just something
pieces of everything
that we might have to consider.
It's a piece of everything.
And I think it's interesting because I think schools, people depend on schools for so many things, as you were saying. And so in a matter, traditionally we think of ourselves because the goal is education, but then there's all these other things that is the whole person. So in a way, I think it's through partnerships. You know, it's through partnering, identifying partnerships, and collaborating in terms of where the needs are and matching them up. So yeah, maybe we can't do all of the things ourselves, but I think we can identify where we need those things and then make those connections.
And a similar point was made at the mental health summit that we went to, that we think of ourselves, our mission is education, and so part of our something of a barrier is a resistance to getting ourselves involved in these other things, but in fact, we're not going to fulfill our education mission if our students don't have the stability, they don't have these other things, they're not going to be successful in our educational program.
And the reality is you're dealing with it anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But let's try to deal with it better.
Yes.
It's kind of two sides of the same process. You have academics and you have your emotional, social piece. If you don't have one, you don't have the other. If you're just working on the mental health part and everybody's happy, great. But then we don't have the academic. And if we just do the academic, then kids aren't available to learn because their other needs aren't being met. So it really is two sides to the same coin, and to me, this is how I see it, a real balancing act between those two things.
So, in my own looking at this and looking at the change that's taking place, it's kind of, I think we're stuck in this hard transition of, taking care of the whole child and their needs and this inclusion practice, and we know we need it, we've been assigned to do it. However, we don't have the ability to flip it and make the necessary changes to be truly effective. And I feel like, to me, it's a sticking point where we're stuck because it looks totally different than what we do every day. And it's kind of what you were saying. You were that person rolling around, and it's 15 years ago, and we need to do things differently, but we're still doing the same thing and piecemealing this change, which is very frustrating.
It is frustrating, and I really see it in terms of professional development, that if you have job-embedded professional development, it makes it easier for people to see, oh, I do have the skills to make some changes this way. So if I take what I'm doing and give it, a tweak, I can get at what I need to get at. And so to me, there's just a lot of learning, collaboration that needs to go on in safe spaces so people can start to think collaboratively, out of the box, what can I shift or change to make a difference for this child? It might be something slightly different for this one over here. And how do I manage all those things, as the leader of a classroom or the leader of a building?
Absolutely. Well, this is a topic we could talk about for a long time, and we're going to talk about it a lot more. And it's a piece almost now. It's a piece about every conversation we have, and
It's really exciting.
through all our work sessions, it comes around to inclusion at one point. So. We'll let you go home where perhaps you're not flooded, or and we know you're not. And but thank you, and we look forward to look forward to the summer work. We look forward to that work every day. And we talk about PD, and we talked about this a long time ago. But perhaps 6 days in the summer for PD and not the rest of the year. That's not a good model. And it's really that continuous
You really have
embedded
to do it
PD.
when the kids are here.
Exactly. So we look forward to the work going forward. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. All right.
And we're just going to wrap up with a few other policies while they lower the water so I can get my car out. And,
That's all right, I'll push it.
So these are second readings, Moira, from last week.
And
last
nothing
time.
has been changed. And to refresh your memory, the first one, the only reason it came up at all for review was because there were references to No Child Left Behind that needed to be changed to reference the current law, which is ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. So that's it, and I also believe that 90-some% of this policy is actually dictated by the state.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
We can't change it. And we did just have a title audit, and they were very happy that this is under review.
Okay, so
you're doing it.
We are so happy they're happy. I mean, that's I can't tell you how much that makes me happy.
So
Why we're
will,
doing this.
this
Go
would
ahead.
be a motion for second reading. I will move policy number 1900, parental involvement for a second reading and adoption.
Second.
Second by Brad. Are we all good? Had an opportunity to read it multiple times. All in favor? It's everyone, no abstentions, just want to point that out. Okay.
That was Brad, right?
Yes.
And the other one is policy 8123.2, prohibition of food and drink in certain instructional spaces for second reading and adoption. And there have been, it's very short. And
So moved.
so I move, sorry.
Wait, you read it all, but so moved, okay.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second by Brad. Now we can speak.
Now we can speak. Okay. Also has not been changed. It did occur to me just today that we could have just called it prohibition, no, never mind. Never mind. So.
No, we're not gonna, no
Yeah,
changes.
no, we're not gonna,
No
no.
changes.
And it didn't make sense anyway, so.
Okay.
Why I was thinking about it, I don't know.
All in favor? That's everyone. So, thanks, Maura. Great job on policy. Other discussion items, Dr. Brown, do we have anything?
No, we are cleaning up a little bit of flooding in some of our buildings right now. That's what Bob Van Kuren is and some others, but we hope to have everything cleaned up by tomorrow morning.
It's,
Is there flooding
Is it supposed to keep
elsewhere?
raining?
Besides here?
Eagle Heights right now.
okay.
In Boynton.
The lot?
They're over there looking.
Well,
They're
it's,
making sure.
No, boy, I hear that the entrance to 13 is a lake, basically.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, you mean right down here by
Further down,
Boynton?
left,
Yeah, right.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't to worry him, but just to let you know that Bob Van Kuren is not here right now. He's been on.
and we appreciate, again, we appreciate our facilities and maintenance personnel getting out there on a Tuesday night in the rain to make sure that we're able to limit any damage to any buildings and then be ready for school tomorrow morning. Upcoming dates, do we need to discuss dates? We've been going back and forth on a few items. We're not going to do board development on the next Tuesday. So we'll find another date for board development. The reorg meeting, I think we are trying to get that scheduled for July 2nd at 8 a.m.
Tuesday or it's a Monday?
It's a Monday. It's really about the only day to do that. If we wait any longer, then we get into folks going away for 4th, and so if we can.
8 a.m. Is that the 8 a.m. 8 a.m.
If that's doable.
Model right there.
We have done it in the PM and AM. We've done it in the morning a few times. If
whatever works.
It's really trying to get the most people there that we can.
What date was that? I apologize.
July 2nd.
July 2nd.
On Monday.
So if there's,
I could do that.
we'll keep working on that, percolating. If there's any strong objections, we can try to deal with it, but try to manage around that. And there's in June, are we set, Jennifer, about combining? We shifted things around a bit for
19th.
the work sessions,
Be
so
there.
just be facilities and finance will be together, and the others. And Moira is going to do a marathon.
Marathon, yes.
On the 5th? Was it on the 5th?
On the 5th.
All right.
4 o'clock curriculum, 5 o'clock policy, 6:30 HR.
Wow.
And
So-
I will attend all three.
So that ought to get on tape, and that ought to get a few points for some of this board stuff. So that deserves an award.
Mastery.
Master committee.
So we good? We're going to go see how things are outside now, I think. Without
Just
objection,
as long as
are we good?
we're looking at dates so that, and we're into June. Now, I
Right.
know that Ithaca High School graduation will be the Thursday of
21st.
21st.
LACS.
LACS.
The 20th.
The 20th, okay. Thank you.
Starting on the 19th, finishing on the...
It'd be after midnight.
I'm just trying to...
Hey, it has not been as long.
Just trying to get...
Timing is good.
I'm just trying to understand the schedule. Are
Wait
we...
for them to see that. To participate.
There you go. So we're good? We're good. Okay, good. So thanks. We're adjourned without objection.
Thank you.